Hey, thank you all so much for joining another episode of Celeste The Therapist podcast. My name is Celeste, and I come on to talk to people that are empowering people. And the purpose is to help shift the way you think. And so that's been going really well for people that have never been into any of my episodes before or have watched me live. But I also enjoy talking about relationships because relationships get really complicated. And honestly, like I'm really tired of seeing all of the I see a lot of relationship podcasts where people just be talking nonsense. I'm going to ask Jeff about his opinion about that part because I just feel like people just be saying anything. I feel like people get on the mic and they say anything. I'm gonna add Jeff to the stream, so I'm gonna have him introduce himself to you all first. Hi, Jeff. How are you?
Hey, how's it going? Good to see you.
Good. Let me make sure I'm on my mic. Jeff, can you introduce yourself to the people?
Yep. So I'm Jeff Rogers. I'm an executive coach, trainer, facilitator, all those things. What that really means is I help people learn how to deal with assholes without being an asshole. That's what being an executive coach in my line of work really is. And so that transcends all parts of your life. That could be work, that could be home, that could be friends, family, romantic relationships. The bottom line is how to navigate other people in a way that gets what I want and also makes me feel good about how I got it. Make
Yeah,
sense?
it makes sense. There's a few questions about getting what you want. I mean, I'm sure you're gonna have a lot to say about it, but what's your thoughts? I know you're not on social media like that, but have you seen a bunch of mics and people talking about relationships? What are your thoughts about it? I feel like everybody just be saying stuff now.
Well, there's definitely bottomless podcasts about the gender wars, right? Uh,
Yeah,
uh, Questions like, should you make your man a plate or should you make your father a plate first?
yeah.
Right? Those kinds of questions, which I understand why people are talking about it. What they're trying to deal with is there's a perceived traditional way to have relationships, right? These are some
Mhm,
roles are feminine and some are masculine,
mhm.
and men they go out and they work in the coal mines all day, and women are at home doing the laundry on that thing by hand, right?
Yeah,
And that's changed, and women are working and they're educated,
yeah,
and
yeah.
men are expected to be active participants in child rearing. And so they're trying to solve, well, how do we know what to do? So I understand where it's coming from. At the same time, toxicity is what gets clicks. And so you can easily eat a diet of pure toxicity if you just get all your gender war content from TikTok.
And you help me understand like why it's so prominent. You're right. Back in the day, the way things were so different and things have changed drastically. So that's why there's all of this dialogue that takes place that feels like, where is this coming from? But it is coming from that makes a lot of sense
Right.
actually.
In theory, it was in so we have an idealized view of the past. In reality, some of our grandmothers worked, some of our grandfathers were
Yeah.
very active dads who knew how to cook.
Yeah.
Sometimes women wore pantses. Sometimes women wore
You
pants,
sound like me.
right. Sometimes women wore pants. Even there were LGBT people 100 years ago. We,
Right.
we perceive things as being so different. They're not as different
Yeah.
as we think they are. But what is
Mhm.
different is the basic push in society that people should have self-determination. In other words, there were always women who didn't want to wear dresses and bake bread for their man. But it used to be that it was widely understood. Yeah, they're messing up. They're not being a woman. And now it's
Yeah.
understood, hey, how dare you define womanhood in that way? And yet, what we want out of a mate, let's be honest, oftentimes what we want out of a mate, we have our own criteria, right? You don't,
Yeah.
you Celeste, there's certain things that you like about your husband that
Mhm.
are probably, traditionally masculine, let's say.
Right. Yep.
Right? It's not like you're really neutral on his every behavior. There's things you think,
Right.
ooh, when after I'm just saying anything, he gets back from mowing the lawn and his forearms are bulging, ooh, sexy or
Mhm.
whatever. You know what I mean? Like we all have those. And so we're trying to navigate them in a world where if everyone has choice, it's a little more complicated than everybody has rigid roles.
Yeah. You make things so logical and it just makes sense. I'm gonna put this question up first. It's not a relationship question, but What's the best way to start a podcast? I know a lot of people who have started but stopped. I want to start, but I want to do it right. You've been podcasting for 5 years. How do you do it? Um, honestly, it takes a lot of intentionality on my part. And the way the way it works now, it wasn't always that way. I have a little help now, but the first few years I didn't. I read a book about podcasting, and I, just stayed consistent. I didn't get bogged down into what other platforms were doing. I think a lot of comparison is why people stop, instead of like how to tailor their craft to work for them. So yeah, so I think consistency. The book I read was called Profitable Podcasting. I read it twice, took notes. I still have the notebook from where I took the notes, and I just took it from there. It wasn't an area that I was well versed in, but I just had to study and learn it with everything I do. I tell y'all, people who's been listening, I'm a very slow learner, and it takes a while for me to like get it together. So, but I got it together.
Mm, that makes
Uh,
sense. Yeah, I
any
think,
thoughts for people who are looking into who want a podcast? What are your thoughts about that?
yeah. Well, the thing is, I think a lot of people, they do this. They're sitting around with their girls and they're having a fun time. They said, "Oh my God, girl, we're so crazy. We should start a podcast." And I don't think that's wrong, except for a lot of things. A podcast is different from just a great conversation in that usually it has kind of like directed content or some kind of
Yeah,
competitive advantage or differentiation. What do I mean by
yeah,
that? Maybe you like sports. Okay. Maybe you like
yeah,
sports and you say, "I'm going to start a sports podcast," and you're welcome to do so. But there are
yeah,
already a lot of sports podcasts.
yeah.
And if you just work at the electric company, you don't have any special knowledge. Like, you get all your sports knowledge from other sports shows.
Hmm.
LeBron's going to change teams. Oh, you got that from ESPN. So you
Yeah,
have like a special expertise in that. I'm not trying to gatekeep. I'm just saying realistically, if I can
yeah,
choose between listening to Stephen A. Smith
yeah,
and John Doe on their sports podcast, well, Stephen A. Smith actually has expertise and
yeah,
access. But there are things that you very well may have expertise in, things that people don't know as much about. When
yeah.
I had a podcast, we did it. I had a podcast called The Poet and the Professor a few years back.
Hmm.
And me and my partner early on, his name's Harry Harding, aka the Poet, and what we would for the first few, we thought, oh, we'll talk about like current events, and we
Hmm.
could do that, but we'd have guests on. But the truth is, we're going to do an hour-long podcast. How much does my guest really know about, I don't know, Trump
Hmm.
or the gender wars? How much do they
Hmm.
know about it? Not that much. What we quickly realized, and where our podcast started to make some sense, is we shifted into in our case, the guest's expertise. And this is what I mean.
Hmm.
I started looking for, we interviewed a flat earther, someone who thought that the earth was flat. We interviewed a white
Hmm.
nationalist, somebody who thought that white people should get their own country and it should be called the United States. Uh, we talked to a woman who had been in a coma. We talked to a woman who'd lost a child. The thing
Right,
is, these people could talk in depth about that experience in their life.
right, right.
You see what I'm saying? And then Harry, in that case, Harry, the poet, he was kind of the touchy-feely one. And I'm the professor. Y'all know me. I am how I am. And so that's what made the podcast make sense. Do you get what I mean?
I get it. Yeah, yeah,
And so whatever people start, they should think kind of like that, meaning like, why would I, if assuming there's 100,000 podcasts out there and they're
yeah,
virtually all free,
yeah,
why would I listen to this one? Well, ideally, it would have something that others didn't have, rather than the
yeah.
50th person opinion on whether Beyonce is better than Rihanna.
Right. And Jeff made a great point. I don't know why I didn't bring that up, but me being a therapist and working in the field all these years, I had an idea on what people were looking for and needed. I would, prior to, it's kind of like I did research, but I wasn't doing research for a podcast, but it worked out that I was already online answering questions about mental health, talking about ways people can work on healing. And that idea was birthed out of the need. So Jeff is making a great point. If you are going to start a podcast, really be mindful on what that niche is There's a podcast called Horrible Decisions. They talk about sex and different sex positivity. If they start coming on talking about therapy and mental health, it wouldn't work. If I switch my platform and start talking about horrible decisions, the people that came for mental health is going to tune out, because it's like, this is not what I am looking for. So if you do decide to start, like, really be mindful that you kind of stick to what you say you're going to do. And if you want to tailor it, that's fine. But also just remember, I think people sometimes could be all over the place and try to go with the trend, but then you lose your audience by doing that. Does that make sense?
It does. And I got one more thing to add. If you really want to do it, just start, dog. The idea that you go, well, I'll start when I have it all perfectly figured out and when everyone has agreed to listen and I can't possibly fail. That's not true. There's no way to do that. When Celeste started this podcast, it could have been that people said, what are you doing? Why would anyone listen to this?
People would say,
yeah, they say, you should do it this way instead of that way.
Yeah.
But she started, she launched, and now, Celeste, how many, whatever,
over 400 episodes. This is my 5th year. Yeah.
400 episodes, and get
every
feedback.
Week I pulled it out, and I'm gonna tell you, sometimes I don't feel like being on here with Jeff, but guess what? I've made a commitment. It has nothing to do with Jeff. Jeff could take this, because I know Jeff. Jeff doesn't have feelings. I'm just kidding. He does.
It's all right. But but the idea is that at a certain point, there's a phrase I like: when you're 70% ready, you're ready. If you wait, you'll never be
I never
ready.
heard that phrase, but I was like 70%. It was a good 30% where I was like, I don't know if I want to do this.
Since then, you've changed mics, you've changed various formats, you changed theme song. Every single thing has changed, but what's consistent is you're iterating forward.
Yeah. Carla says you don't have feelings.
I don't come here for the abuse, but I'll take it.
I'm sorry, Carla. We got to stop abusing our guy. All right. The second question. Thank you for the platform. My boyfriend will self-sabotage and will not go to therapy. I have been trying to tell him about himself. I'm sorry. Let me start over, because I just know it. I already feel Jeff's energy in this question, because we've had similar questions. So I already know what he's going to say. But let me just start over. Okay. Thank you for the platform. My boyfriend will self-sabotage and will not go to therapy. I have been trying to tell him about himself, but it's not working. How can I get him to start taking better care of himself?
So what do you think? First of all, what do you think about the phrase, tell him about himself? How do you like that?
I know. It's not good. Believe me, I was guilty. I understand like how she feels, or that this person feels, but it's just not. It's just not.
When I hear tell him about himself. So if you want, right, someone says boyfriend going to therapy, you can't. So you certainly can't make them, right? We agree on that. There's no way to make anyone. You really can't. If you got kids, you ever try to make your kids, you bought the baby food and you got peas and you try to make them eat them mashed peas, but it's a baby. They weigh 15 pounds. You weigh whatever, over 100 pounds. You're smart. They're a dumb baby. You can't make them do anything. You can't make them. So if you can't make a baby eat peas, then surely you can't make a grown man go to therapy. That being said, does that mean just walk away from them, right? Well, here's what you can do. When we use the solution focused method, here's how it works. You're trying to find the lowest common denominator. And by that, I mean the thing that fits you both. So you're skipping to, you need therapy. He won't go. There's some block why he won't go. I don't know. He doesn't believe in therapy. He thinks therapy is good, but not for him. He don't want to spend the money. He don't have the time. I don't know why. Doesn't matter.
Right.
First of all, does he agree that there's an issue? Right? I would look for that. What issue does he agree that there is? Do you get what I mean? So if he says, you say, the problem is you're depressed. He doesn't agree that he's depressed. Okay. But he says, I'm not depressed. I simply can't get out of bed when I want to get out of bed, but I struggle to get out of bed. And sometimes I think about all my problems and I feel sad, but I'm not depressed. Okay. Why are we fighting over the word depressed? Sounds like we both agree that if there was a way for you to get out of bed, you would like that way, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yes, I would, because he agrees that that's a problem. You say, okay, so what are you willing to try? Are you willing to try setting the alarm? I already do that. Are you willing to try going to bed earlier. I mean, I lay in bed, but I can't fall asleep. Okay, are you willing to try talking to somebody? No.
Mhm.
Then okay, what are you willing to try? And together, you say, you and me agree. Every time he goes, blah, 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 why are we talking about this? You say, oh, we don't have to, but you said you want to be able to get out of bed,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
What I'm really describing is the whole process of coaching and therapy both have this similar thing, which is Celeste
Yeah.
knows someone comes to her on session one, and it's so clear to Celeste what problem this person has. But if the person doesn't agree, you don't slap them or fight them. You
Mhm.
basically say, well, what are you willing to do differently? And
Yeah.
slowly but surely they come back, and on the 10th visit, they go, you know what? I'm thinking I should do XYZ, something that Celeste said in session one. And
Yeah,
all
yeah.
Celeste does is go, I told you so. Why don't you listen to me? Right? She
Mhm.
goes, that's good. It sounds like you're making real
Yeah.
progress. I can't wait to see the
Yeah.
results.
Yeah. And you know what, black girls getting her shift together is telling him puts him in automatic defense, right? And I think, you know, for people in relationships, whether it's therapy or whatever, just remember that part. But Sophia saying when it costs you your peace, walk away.
In
So
all
I
caps.
obviously and I think that I mean I don't know the details of the situation, but I do think that people look at psychiatry and therapy as the only modality for working on self, and we miss out on other things because that's what's like kind of being pushed and marketed. And I'm a therapist, so I it's not like I'm hating on therapists, but I do believe that in relationships they give this kind of alternative sometimes, and I talk to people, so I know it's like, oh well, he got to get therapy, and it's like, you know, let's think outside the box, like what else could he do, or what can you suggest? Does he like podcasts? Suggest like a podcast that talk. Eventually, I've had people over the years suggest my podcast. Eventually, they decide to go to therapy. These are people who don't even believe in it, right? But because of how the conversation was going, it got them into that space. So you know, I think that the defense, you put people on a defense, especially when they're not ready to hear. You know how many people I deal with that struggle with substance use? I'm not like, you're an alcoholic and you need to go to AA. That'll never work.
It doesn't work. That's
Um,
what's so important, is that it doesn't work. It's not that it's not nice. That
right.
Dr.
It
Phil
doesn't work.
approach, like, you're a bad mother. That doesn't
Right.
work. That doesn't,
No.
they're doing that for the cameras because people find it entertaining, but it
Yeah.
doesn't help the individual. It doesn't help the subject. The
No.
subject needs to start feeling empowered, right? So,
Yeah.
in other words, we're going to figure out something that you can try, that
Yeah.
you're willing to try. And then
Right.
let's say they weighed 800 pounds. They're one
Yep.
of those people that can barely walk. They run out of breath walking to the kitchen. Okay. You go, well, well, you need gastric bypass and all types of drugs and surgery and all. You might feel that way. But
Hmm.
meanwhile, you say, well, what are you willing to do? You say, well, I'm willing to, usually I would eat a dozen eggs for breakfast. So I wonder, do you think you'd live if you only ate nine? And then they eat nine for a week. And then you go, well, God damn, this is great. I mean, I wonder how far you could push it. You think you could do six? Six
Hmm.
eggs for breakfast? Only six? I know that's a smaller omelet than you used to, but I wonder, I mean, you've already come this far. And what people are doing is building up momentum and realizing,
Yep.
oh my God, I have some control. There's nothing I can do to clap my hands and not weigh 800
Hmm.
pounds,
Hmm.
but I can
Hmm.
do
Hmm.
better. Right.
Yeah.
Carla notes that this is called motivational interviewing.
Hmm.
This is basically the most you can do. You know that game? It's in the Olympics. What's it called? Curling. So that there's like an ice puck on the ice, and you can't touch the puck, but they sweep in front of it.
No, I never seen that.
Well, I don't know. It seems like the worst sport in the world, but it's an Olympic sport. So a puck is going on the ice. You're trying to get it to go somewhere, and the whole team is like sweeping in front of it to try to make it go a
Uh-huh.
little left rather than a little right. That's like
Okay.
the impact you can possibly have on another person. It's like the most you can do. Think about this. They put people in jail for 10 years. Then those people get out and commit a reoffend
Yeah.
in months.
Yeah.
They put you in jail for 10 years. You get out, you do it again. There's no way to control other people to this degree, but you can certainly influence them if you maintain the relationship rather than, I know you were just writing, letter writer, but when Celeste and I here tell them about themselves, it's an
Yeah.
indication that you're probably overstepping and costing the relationship something.
Yeah. I don't think people realize that's how, I think they really, you know, care for the person and really want, but it's kind of like, I remember a couple years ago we had a podcast, and I remember a similar question came up. I remember you said, Celeste, what if you were trying to lose weight and Jonathan's behind you, like, put that burger down or put that cake down? I remember you said something like that, and I was like, that is so true. Like, I always use that example when I'm talking to people as they're struggling with their partner, where I'm like, you got to meet people where they are. But again, like what Sophia says about we don't know the full details, but if you're being affected by it in a negative way, it's affecting your peace. You got to really like think about what's your negotiables and non-negotiables.
Yeah.
But
And you can even
but
say,
yeah.
like, let's say one thing is, if they're struggling at work and they're not
Hmm.
getting they're struggling at work and they got a bad review,
Hmm.
okay, that's one thing. How about they got fired because they just couldn't get out of bed and now we're missing the rent? You see how
Right.
that's two different, like, it's two different
Yeah.
degrees. There comes a
Yeah.
degree when you say, where you could say, listen, uh, I know you're going through a tough time, but I'm like a human too. And so if we
Yeah.
can make some progress on this, I'm not going to be able to stay inert with you. I can't just
Hmm.
stay broken down on the side of the road with you, right?
Right.
But
Right.
I'm willing to move forward while we kind of figure out what our next steps. But there's only so long I'm willing to
Yeah.
live like this. Carla
Yeah.
also knows. Carla basically stealing my practice. Carla notes the miracle question, right?
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah, you do talk about that a lot. She listens a lot, so she might be stealing it. Yes, you know what? She is stealing it
I
from
would
you.
say she's
Yeah,
stolen.
yeah,
I would
yeah. Because you
say,
always talk about the miracle
but
question.
right, the way that I usually, so she says, ask someone, what would your life be like if you didn't eat 12 eggs? The way I do it, I say, like, uh, uh, here's how I use the miracle question. I go, all right, it's 6 months from now, okay, and you've made as much progress as possible as you could made in 6 months. Oh my God, all the things you wanted to do, you've
Mhm.
gotten as far as a human could possibly get, but in 6 months.
Mhm.
Describe what that looks like. And they go, well, I've lost 20 pounds and I've got a good review at work. And I did my natural hair journey. So now my hair is natural, no longer breaking off. And they name all the things. And you go, well, goddamn, that does. And if you had all that, that would be like a miracle for you? Okay. What could you do today that would get you towards those things?
Mhm.
We're not going to get all the way there because that's 6 months away,
Yeah.
baby. But what can you do that will get you closer in a few
Yes.
days?
Yeah.
And people think of them and you go, oh, of these things you've generated, what are you willing to
Uh-huh.
try? Of the
Uh-huh.
things you're not going to do them all. What is one thing? If you were trying to
Yep.
quit cigarettes, the first thing you do, well, what if you said, I smoke, instead of smoking a pack, I smoke 19 instead of 20?
Yep.
Because if you did that once a week for 20 weeks, eventually at the end, you wouldn't smoke any.
Yeah.
This is the idea. Change is super
Yeah.
hard.
It is.
TV, on movies, they set us up because they blow past it. What they do in movies
They
is
do.
you decide you're gonna change something, and then there's a montage. I need a hero. I need a hero. And then bang, the person has changed. But in real
Yep.
life, you have to live that montage. You have to do it.
Uh-huh.
Whatever the
It's
thing
so
is you want to do,
true.
you want to train to beat that guy that took your lunch money. It won't happen in a 30-second montage. You have to do it. So that's
Yep.
what
Yep.
people are.
Yep. Mhm. Carla claims she's a social worker. She didn't steal it, but well, who knows? Just because she's a social worker doesn't mean she doesn't steal. I just also want to point out, Jeff, for people listening, I know you want to show off your beard and your hair because you was like you've been on your journey and you touched your hair. You was using that as an example, but I'm sure that was about you. But okay,
Right, my
Jeff, yeah,
natural beard.
you look good. It looks good. It looks
I
good.
stopped. You know what I'm saying? I stopped relaxing my beard. This beard's all natural now. No more beard weave. I got rid of it all. This beard, I did the big chop and I grew it out all natural. And now I'm finally being my real me.
A while ago, Ursula from this Black Girls Get, she pointed out when you make a point, you do your beard, you rub your beard down. So I can't never unhear that. She said that. But we got a few more questions. I want to get through this in an hour. All right. So I have been on a journey of taking care of myself. I'm a trauma survivor and have always ignored signs of stress through work. I'm a Black woman and I have been at my job for 10 years. I am always getting high praise for my performance and dedication, but the last 3 months I'm feeling used. I have always been the yes person at work and in my personal life. And then she wrote, I have been working on changing that. How can I change how I show up at work? I know I played a role with being the point person on many projects, projects, but I see how unbalanced the workload is.
Mm,
Did you get all that? You
I
get the
did.
gist? Okay.
I did. So this person, they've experienced trauma and they channeled it into like, I'll cure it through excellence, particularly professional excellence.
Mhm.
Right? I'll feel good about myself because I will crush it at work, and I will crush it. Here's how I know I'm crushing it. I'll get a lot of praise, and my boss will admire me. They'll
Yeah.
and but of course at work, oftentimes your reward for hitting your reward for making 10 is to
Reward.
make 10 more. Congratulations. You made 10 so good, you got to make 10 more. That's what a lot of management looks at it as. And so the question is for this letter writer, right? I think if I ask them, if this was somebody else, right? What
What
would
would
you
you
tell?
tell? That's
If this
good.
was
Yep.
somebody else, what would you tell them? Would you tell them, well, just keep your mouth shut, and however much they pile on you, just keep doing it? Or would you say, you know what? You got to advocate for yourself. And if, let's say, they work there too, they say, I'd advocate for you. Would you advocate for, let's say you had an employee, letter writer, and so someone works for you and they're crushing it like this. They haven't gotten enough raises. They do more
Mhm,
work than everybody else, but don't get
mhm.
as much pay, whatever it is. Would you advocate for them? Would you go to the big boss and say, hey, John Johnson's really doing a good job and John Johnson really deserves more? I think you would. So now here's the only difference. Can you do that for yourself? Can you treat someone else as well as you treat yourself, trauma survivor? That's the question you have to ask. Are you willing to advocate for yourself the way you'd advocate for this other person who is merited, this hypothetical person who is so merited?
Jeff,
Right?
why? Because that's something that I always tell people. Like, if I know it's somebody in their life, especially if it's a young person, and I'll say, "Would you say this to them?" People get really emotional when I say that, and they start thinking about it. Like, I would never. Why? Why is it that it's easier for us to take stuff than it is for us to tell other people not to take it? Why does that happen?
Right. I think that there's an aspect of self-doubt for a lot of people that shows up only when they're looking at themselves.
Mm.
So it's called the spotlight effect. So when you go to the prom, you're so worried because you really wanted your mom to buy you that $10,000 dress, but she could only get you the $200 dress because we live regular life. You're not actually
Yeah, the Kardashians.
you're not the Kardashians. You get a $200 dress, please. And then you walk. I'm going to be so embarrassed because I didn't get the dress I wanted. So forth, and you spend the whole night thinking about your dress, not realizing. And then you see other people. Oh, they look so beautiful, but many of them have the same feeling. They have insecurity about their own dress, and they're looking at you saying, "Oh, they look so beautiful." And if there's some aspect of you that's great, they focus on, "Oh, Celeste has big, beautiful eyes. Why do I have these
Mhm.
small little rat eyes?"
Right,
Right,
right, right,
right. Whatever it is, not rather Celeste looking at them. Oh, they have such delicate thumbs. Why
right,
can't I have thumbs more like
right.
that?
Yep.
And so then at work, if it's somebody else, you say, overall, I'm so glad to have them. They're so great. But if it's yourself, you say, oh, am I going to be exposed as a fraud? Will I be exposed? Will
Mm.
somebody, if I push back, will they criticize me? I say, hey, I think I've done a lot and I should get a raise. Or I think I've done a lot. I
Mhm.
don't think I can take on, I already have 2 extra projects. I don't think I can take a third one. And you're worried someone will say, you, as inadequate as you are,
I know.
you think you deserve more? You're lucky to be here. The fear that someone will say that to you is so strong that people have an
Oh,
aversion to
that makes sense.
advocate for themselves. And so the solution is, again, that trick that we're using when we say imagine it was somebody else. We're saying look at you the way you would look at you if you weren't you.
Dang.
And when
Yeah.
we do that, people get to look and they say, you know what? I do admire people that behave like me, even though when I behave like me, I worry that it's not enough.
Mhm.
And then just keep that same energy. Keep that same energy. You know that inner someone. The inner critic voice can be so loud, right? When you mess up and you say, "Oh, I'm so stupid. I'm blowing it." When other people mess up, you say, "Hey, you're so stupid." A few people do, but most people would.
But
Right?
most
Most
people
people
don't.
would not
Yeah.
just say, "Hey, that was stupid, dummy. You suck." That's not the way most humans talk to other humans. But then you
Yeah.
talk to yourself like that so
I know.
casually.
I know. And it's so true. And also some stuff is related to how you were spoken to or how things happen and you've internalized it over the years. But what you're saying, it makes sense that the idea of what could possibly happen, like supersedes you sticking up for yourself. And so for people like listen, and I always say like them thoughts, you sometimes you can't help the thoughts that come in, but the way you entertain them is is important, right? And I think unfortunately people entertain the negative thought that comes in of like, what if they say you're stupid, you don't deserve a raise? But it's like, okay, if they say I don't deserve a raise, and then you answer back and say, if they say I don't deserve a raise, then I either figure out if I want to stay here or go where I'm appreciated. Like we don't challenge that negative thought. We'll sit back and we'll just like let it ride, and it's not healthy at
Yeah, they
all.
might not. They might not. You ever watch what's that, like, Antique Roadshow? One of those shows where someone brings in an
Yeah,
antique,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
And it just be like a little dish, and then
yeah,
you be like, "I don't know, it's a dish, we always had it. My mother used to put cigarettes out in it." And then they go, "Oh, this dish was actually owned by the 3rd queen of Spain, and
yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's worth $100,000." Right? And you find out, "Oh my god, I didn't know this thing's value." Right? But it has a value to some people, but not others. Where some people put
mhm,
cigarettes on it, other people pay $100,000 for it.
right,
You might be like that. Meaning, it's possible that they'll say, "Raise you?" No. But they'll just like your mother putting the cigarette out in $100,000 dish. In other
yeah,
words, their opinion is not like law. If you
yes.
really know you're whooping ass at this job and you're delivering, then and you feel firm, fair, confident in that assessment. I'm not promising that they recognize you. But you advocate for yourself, and then it'll be what it'll be. If they don't see it, well, because I know I got the goods, I'll go somewhere else. This is true in dating. This is true in
Mhm,
work. Don't get me
mhm,
wrong. It's not just I'm good no matter what. Because some
right,
people, we all know somebody who basically somehow they can't imagine that they're anything but perfect. That's how they defend their ego. This is
yeah,
not that. This is, did I do the pre work? I did. Did I show up on time? I did. Did I do what they asked? I did, and I did more. So does that mean I did a good job? Yes, that is what it
yeah,
means. So then
yeah.
if someone says, yes, but anyone could have done that. Okay, then I guess get anyone to do it. And I will work somewhere where people appreciate this contribution.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. I like that. Ursula is saying my inner critic can be paralyzing, and then in therapy, it was the same words my parents used as a child. Um, so I just want to make sure we kind of answered this person's question. It sounds like boundaries are important, paying attention to your inner critic for how do I change how I show up? How do you want to show up at work? I think probably starting with that, like where are the holes in the problem areas? And thinking about where you can say no to. Sometimes we're so used to saying yes, the people that say yes, like the people the email is not required on your phone, but you want to be a go-getter. And so you're the person that answered their emails after 5 and on the weekends is looked at highly regard, and the people that don't, why won't they answer their email? Or because they don't work on the weekends. So I think it sounds like from the way you wrote this, you're paying attention to how you started the issue of just being a yes person, and it's going to take some intentionality on your part to turn that around. But in order to do that, you really got to think about like, what do I want this to look like? And really be honest with yourself. And know people may push back if you've been answering emails on the weekends and all of a sudden you're not available. They may see you as problematic. So just be mindful of that. Because our health is so important, especially as we get older. I don't think we realize how we break our bodies down by the way we treat it and how we just say yes and do things automatically.
Right. In game theory, there's something called a positive sum game. That's where both people benefit more than either would otherwise. So, like, if you have eggs but no flour, and I have flour but no eggs, we can share, and together we both get cake, a thing that neither of us could have had alone.
Yeah.
Right? It's better than just I got a bunch of eggs and I got a bunch of flour. That's a
Right. Right.
positive.
Right.
So in this case, you have a work work performance, right? You do your job and you do it well, and they
Mhm.
have some version of money and accolades and perks and benefits that they can bestow upon
Yep.
you, right? And all you want is a win-win. Currently, when you say you feel used, what you're saying is, I worry that I'm in a win-lose situation where I do things for them and they win and
Mhm.
I lose. So you want to move it to a win-win. So when you talk,
Yeah.
someone called me today and they said, listen, I got this offer. I have this job. I like my job. They called up and said, hey, we got kind of an emergency. We're hiring somebody to run this whole other department, but they bailed. Could you run both departments on an interim basis? Okay. Now, he said, well, I said, first thing I asked, well, how do you feel? And he was like, well, I would like to do it, so forth, so on. But of course, he's thinking, are they going to cut the check? I think I could do it. I think I got the skills. They're going to cut the check. So I said, tell him, say, hey, listen, I'm flattered. This sounds like a great thing. And I do think I like a challenge and I think I could do this.
Mhm.
At the same time, I do have a lot going on in my life. I got kids and stuff like that. So, basically, what's the compensation? Because it is
Yeah.
going to be a disruption. And when I do things, I don't do them halfway.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to do it on the side. This is going to consume a part of my life. And
Yeah.
then they say, well, we were going to give you an extra $15 a month. No. If they say, we were going to pay this other person a whole salary, we'll give you half of that salary, 2/3 of that salary. That's a win-win to me. Y'all got
Yeah.
someone running this and save money, and I'm
Yeah.
getting extra money, although I'm getting extra work.
Yeah.
That's a
Unfortunately,
win.
people will look to please them instead of thinking about how it's gonna affect them, and we don't think about how we're affected a lot of
And
times.
all the, right. And this person, this letter writer, sometimes has buyer's remorse. Right afterwards, they agree to do it, and then afterwards they feel like this wasn't worth it, or I'm not
Yeah.
being recognized, or I'm not. So you just have to draw. How will I feel about this when I take on a
Yeah.
client? We talk about, I get paid money to do my work, but
Mhm.
whatever I agree to, the main thing that's important to me is later on I won't feel like I shouldn't have taken this.
Mhm.
Do you get what I mean? So I
Mhm.
work for more, I work for less. I do big, huge projects with multinational corporations. I do little small things with individuals or nonprofits. But all that I'm screening for beforehand is that at the end of it, I'll feel like that was a win-win. I won't feel like
Mhm.
some kind of chump.
Mhm.
Make sense?
Makes sense, yeah. All right, this last question, let me see, will it all fit? All right, no, so I'll just break it up. So, um, all right, it's a lot. Hi Celeste, love your podcast. I'm a new listener. I'm struggling with my relationship right now. I've grown this jealousy or discomfort with my partner watching porn or saving certain content on social media. So much so that I check their phone and I've never been that person. I've told them I felt this way before. They have made me feel insecure about the relationship in the past with comments made towards me about my appearance or about my faults. We've been in a relationship for 7 years. Let me see. Um, it feels like the damage done from things that have been said has stuck with me. At this point, any comments of another woman angers me. This is new for me and I don't know where to go from here. I would love to hear your opinion and advice.
Hmm.
There's a
Celeste,
lot going on here.
there is a lot. You want to go first on this?
Um
You don't have.
no, it's a lot to break down. So I'll let you go because you do a better job at breaking it down.
Well, when I look at this, right?
Mhm.
So if we just talk about what this starts off as if pornography is the problem, but as I hear more and more, it doesn't sound like pornography is the problem to me. It sounds like it might be the catalyst, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. So I think of porn the way I think of like junk food, which is to
Mhm.
say that there's really no argument that it is good for you,
Mhm.
but I expect most people consume a certain amount of junk food. Most
Mhm.
people do. If you met someone who said, I've never tasted candy, you'd be like, I just don't believe you.
Mhm.
I don't think I almost don't think that's
Right.
possible. Is
Right.
your life Jumanji? You know what I mean? Like you've eaten candy, dog. You just have. And so I look at pornography as roughly that same way. And this is backed up particularly virtually all men consume some level of pornography. That's the truth of the matter. That being
Mhm.
said, it's not necessarily so great for you, and it's possible to consume too much of it. But it doesn't sound like that's the real issue. As it goes, I'm hearing they make me feel insecure, and I'm thinking, is it because they're consuming pornography? with comments that they made toward me about my appearance or my faults. Ah, so that could happen with or without the porn, couldn't it? That is not,
Yeah.
that's comments made about appearance or faults. Been in a relationship for 7 years. And then, Celeste, could you go to the next page? The next
Yeah.
paragraph?
Um,
About my, we've been in a relationship for 7 years, and it feels the damage done from things has been said that it stuck with me. So, in other words, it's one thing to consume pornography silently, privately,
mhm,
which is what I think many people do. It's
mhm.
another thing to then say, I wish you looked more like this woman, or if you look like her, then I'd have a good life. Or when are you gonna hit the gym? Or she's better than you. Well, guess what? That is, and repeated comments of that nature, it would make a lot of sense to me that your insecurity would rise, because those comments, what could be said about them other than that I would expect them to make somebody begin to feel inadequate? Does that make, does this, do you see where I'm going
Yeah,
with this?
I see. I'm just thinking about they have made me feel insecure about the relationship in the past with comments made towards my appearance or my faults. And, you know, I'm wondering, obviously we don't know, but I'm also sometimes I think when a partner is like saying something, it's the way to say things that may come off the wrong way. Um, that could have happened too, where especially if there's insecurity already.
Surely,
Like,
I mean, right. I think we both, when you see them say, they make me feel, of course, you and me go up. No one can make you feel anyway. That's you. But
uh-huh.
I know what they mean. As this goes, this reads like something that's happened, been happening, and frankly,
Mhm.
there's a toxic. How do I put it? Something I've seen before is, uh, somebody, if they want change out of the partner, you see this too with parents, right? Parents
Yeah.
in this, in a
Yeah.
non-sexual way, where
Yeah,
when
yeah,
they want something out of the kid, they start comparing them to kids that they think are better.
yeah.
Well, Junior,
That
he got A's and he's on the football team. Oh, well, Junior's mother must be so lucky, right? Trying to make
yeah,
their own kid feel inadequate,
I
thinking that
know.
that will motivate them,
Work, but it doesn't, yeah.
right? And so, in the same way, I could imagine saying, "Oh my God, look at the way this woman, she's so curvy, but also very fit. Man, I wish I had a woman like that."
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
make you feel like garbage, which I would say, uh, take the point out of it. Those comments are simply deleterious to a relationship, right?
Mhm.
And so this
Can
is
you
the,
just define deleterious? I've never heard
oh,
that word before.
deleterious, negative.
Okay.
They ruin it over time, make it crumble over time.
Mhm.
And so, the issue is, to me, right? Looking at the phone or stuff like that, right? Guilting, shaming, exactly. Black girls getting their shift together. Looking at the phone, that is not necessarily a great response, but while it's not necessarily so great, and I would stop that because it's not at all the problem. And also, the problem isn't really the porn. The problem is actually, this person has repeatedly saying things like this to you. And what I would wonder is, when this person says something like this, what do you feel like you can say to that? That someone says like, "Now this is a good body. I mean, you're okay. I mean, you don't have the body you had when we first met, but you're still decent. But this is a good body." If they
Yeah.
say something like that, Celeste, what should the letter writer say? Should they say, "Okay, honey, I'll go to the gym"?
No.
What should
7
they say?
years is a long time too. I think about how a lot of women stay in these kind of emotionally abusive relationships, and it doesn't happen overnight. It's, like, very subtle. Um, but, and now, like, you're losing yourself because now your energy is in checking his phone, um, and probably, like, just saying saving certain content. That person saves certain content on social media. Um, I just think about you losing yourself in this process. And you said even now in the last part, the person said, the end of it, it said, um, at this point, any comment of another woman angers me. This is new for me and I don't know where to go from here. It really sounds like you're struggling a lot. And because initially I got stuck on the porn, but you're right, it's just not about the porn or the social media. It's about the comments and all of that. Like now, and you know what the mind does? The mind will continue to look for evidence of that. And because now you're fixated on it, everything, the fact that even a comment, it could be like, oh, did you see blah, blah, blah. And then you're angry because they brought up somebody's name. Now you're looking like the person with the issues. And I hate that for people where there really is an issue there, but because you're having a hard time articulating it or reconciling with it or figuring out what you want to do, it's coming off in a way that you seem dysfunctional, but it's a lot of years to be holding on to all of this stuff. What are your thoughts about that?
I think that's all true, and I think even you great job highlighting any comment about another woman. It seems to me like my comment might be to this person, why are you mentioning this to me? Why are you talking to me about this other woman or this
Yeah.
woman's appearance or anything like that?
Yeah.
And refuse to be gaslit and say some version of, don't say nothing like that to me no more. And see where we go. This technique, this thing that you do where you compare me to another woman and say that I'm inadequate, I don't ever want to hear it again.
Yeah.
I'm not promising the person will say, you got that, baby.
Right.
But that's where I would start. Because it's one thing. There are couples where a girl can walk by with a fat butt, and then they both go like, you see that, baby? Yeah, she got a donkey, baby.
Yep.
That's a thing that exists, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And when that's working for both people in a relationship, great. But if someone walks by and you say, why can't your ass be like that? Right. And of course, the dude, flip it over. A dude walks by and she goes, look at that gray sweatpants print. Your print's looking kind of small in comparison. Well, guess what?
Lose this shit.
Yeah, well, he won't be like, I gotta go get some gas station pills. He'll be like, yeah. So, but I wouldn't, even though I just said that, I wouldn't retaliate with that. I would say, what's this comment meant to say? Basically, I would confront that. I would nip that in the bud.
Right.
But if he can't stop, then it's like, all right, jerk. Then now before maybe you could say, although I'm skeptical, you could say that you didn't know this bothered me. But now I've told you. So are you happy to keep hurting me in this way? Is that what you like to do?
Yeah.
And then it'll be what it'll be. So far, I know you wrote this letter. I know there's good things too. But I think so. Me, Celeste, commenters are coming. So far, this relationship sounds like it sucks.
And what Ursula, she wrote in the comments, hope keeps us in a toxic relationship longer than we should. And I truly believe that, especially you think about, I know we brought this up before, but for some reason, when people spend this many years together, they'd be like, well, what's the point? Why start over? And I know it's not easy to just leave something, but one of the things I tell people when we're talking and they're struggling in a relationship, start taking care of yourself. It's hard to take care of yourself if you're checking the phone, if you're on alert, trying to figure out like whose content they're saving, whose pictures are they liking. You're taking away from yourself. So even if it's not like I'm going to leave, I know this relationship isn't the best, then I would really challenge you to really look at what does it look like to really take care of me. I think that really needs to be the move.
Yeah, I think what's important is to draw that boundary and basically say like, but I'm when I hear this, I hear you have to draw this boundary, but I acknowledge there's a decent chance that the person will keep doing it because people that do this. But you draw the boundary and then say, the next move's yours, dog. Because if you talk like this, then I'll know what I got to do.
I didn't hardly read this. I hesitated putting it up because sometimes he gets on my nerves, but sometimes he says good stuff.
Yep. I didn't hear the beginning, so you might have covered this. I understand not speaking to a partner negatively from a man's perspective. What if he's coping with his lack of attraction to her now by watching porn? So his comparison is because he doesn't feel comfortable just saying straight up he has an issue instead of taking the passive aggressive approach. I agree. I did cover that. I think that there's a possibility. I won't quite say that's why he's watching porn, because I bet Jay-Z's with Beyonce, but I'd be surprised if he ain't seen no porn in 2023. It's part of it. It's very many men. It's a part of their monthly routine, but uh, it doesn't. This behavior is toxic enough that you got to take a hard stance against it. That is not how you impact somebody. We talked earlier about a very positive way to influence somebody to make positive change. This is the opposite of that, right? If you're into fitness and you want your partner to be into fitness, you can say, "Hey, honey, you want to go to the gym?" Instead of you said, like, "If I knew you were going to be Jabba the Hutt, I would. I don't think we would have moved in together." Acting like that, even if they have gained weight, that is wrong. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter. They've gained weight. They stop. You got to. That's toxic. Do you get what I mean? And
Yeah.
so it doesn't matter if they're watching porn because they're not attracted. Then they should find ways to address that positively instead of being instead of going, "Wow, I wonder what it's like to be with a pretty girl."
That is so wrong.
Right? But people pull those maneuvers, tearing away at your self-confidence and all that. If you don't like me, then leave.
Yeah.
How about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And I really hope this dialogue Jeff and I had helps, and the people that are listening live right now are kind of agreeing. But I think really thinking about the energy that you're putting into it and how it's affecting you. Unfortunately, especially women, I feel like we wait too long um to realize like we're losing ourselves. So
Right?
do you have? Oh, go
Someone
ahead.
I'll flip the goddamn table if my partner said that. Right? Because it's nasty. And the thing is, humans have a negativity bias, and by that I mean that the weight of one negative comment outweighs the weight of 4 positive comments. This is
Yeah.
true in relationships. If your partner says one positive thing and one negative thing, all you'll think about is the negative. That's what it's
Mhm,
like to be a human being. And
mhm.
this is, not toxic negative. This is just like, Celeste, the chicken's kind of overcooked, huh? That's like not that bad
Mhm.
versus like, damn, I knew you couldn't cook as good as my mother, but I thought you'd be able to cook at least as good as someone's mother. You go like, are you just attacking me at dinner? Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a level where it's like, yeah, you're just being nasty. And
Yeah,
I'm
and some
imagining
people
just
are like
from this
that.
woman's reaction, I get the sense I'm not somebody. I get the sense that these comments, if they're comparing the person to other women, comparing your romantic partner to somebody else, most of those comparisons are going to be toxic. There's almost no room to say like, wow, I wish I mean, honey, you're okay, but I really wish you were cute as them. If you were as cute as them, if you were as sexy as him, maybe I would do it more. Like, nah, that's not good. So,
I don't think in relationships we don't learn conflict resolution. We don't learn how to continue growing and building. So these things get stuck, and before you know it, it's 7 years, and you're always listening to this person compare you, and I just really, I really, want you to think about how can I take care of me, because it just sounds like such a painful space to be in. So that was it. I'm just gonna quick recap because I love how Jeff is able to conceptualize. Jeff in the comments, Liz. Hi, Liz. By the way, Liz has been following me before the podcast. I love her. Liz and Ursula both looked up the word, and it's funny because my clients, I be telling them like, because sometimes if they struggle with knowing it, I say, listen, I don't know everything. Sometimes on the podcast, Jeff would say some shit, and I'd be like, what is that? I'll pause and be, I'm not gonna pretend like I know what's going on. I know what I know, and I know what I don't know.
well, good.
Um,
I had to learn the word once too. Deleterious, causing harm or damage. Right.
yeah, you probably used to read the dictionary like Jonathan did. You guys are so smart for no reason. um, so the first question, we talked about how can I get my boyfriend to go to therapy. Um, and then the second question, we talked about some work stuff. Um, and then we also talked about just how do I work on the last question, basically, how do I work on, um, I'm angry with all this stuff happening. It sounds like a lot of emotions are happening, something you can't control. Sounds like a lot of these things are things that are not in your control. But what would be kind of like your closing statement or words?
Well, you know what's interesting? In the first
Mhm.
one, they said, "How can I get my boyfriend to go to therapy?"
Yep.
That's when they're thinking that they're dreaming, "How can I change this other person?" When in actuality, you have to change your approach mostly. At work, they're saying the letter writer from work is saying, "I need to change myself." And I think that is this, how can I change how I show up at work? And I think that's accurate. And then this last letter writer, the one with the commenting boyfriend, they are they appear to think, how do I change myself? And I would say that they need to change the least. Do you get what I'm saying? Meaning, like, the main change they need to do is draw a hard boundary. So it's interesting how what people struggle with in all these is, to what degree should I change and to what degree should someone else change? And then how do we
Mm,
navigate that? What if they don't want to change? What if I can't make them change? So life, a lot of times, dealing with other people is about kind of understanding your boundaries and your power and the limits of your power.
yeah,
You could
that's
get,
so
when
true.
you Celeste becomes a therapist because she wants to help people. And slowly but surely, as you're a therapist, you slowly realize the real limits of what it takes to help somebody else.
Yes,
Right? If
yes.
you start off just knowing, I'll be such a good therapist, I'll just be fixing people all day.
Yep,
Then
yep, yep.
they'll show up like a broken toaster. I'll reach in them with my mental screwdriver and hammer and net, and then I'll send them out to do a fixed. And it's
Yes,
nothing
yes.
like that. It's nothing like that. So how do you
Yeah,
change your boyfriend? You can't. You change how you approach him, and then he does what he does, and you do what you do. How do I change myself at work? You change yourself to a degree, but they might like it, they might not, and you might have to
right.
leave. How
Yeah.
do I stop going through my boyfriend's phone because I get jealous when he watches porn? Porn's not even relevant to this. The real
Yes,
thing is,
it
you
was that,
you
yeah.
need a boundary about how this person speaks to you, and if you can change that, then in theory, the porn jealousy would subside, because this is not really about porn. It's about all the ways in which this person makes you feel inadequate.
Mhm. Yeah,
And so this is the tough thing. When is it me that should change? When is it someone else that should change?
yeah.
That's like a big battle. And you know what's the nice thing? We actually get it's a selection bias. If someone's writing in to a psychology, therapy, self-help
Mhm,
podcast,
mhm.
then they're already probably introspective. There are other
Yeah,
people
I think
who need
so,
to do
yeah.
a lot of changing, but they would never write in because they just
Right.
know that the problem with the world is everybody else sucks. I am
Yeah.
perfect as I am.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The people, malignant narcissists need to do a lot of changing, but they're unable to conceptualize that. Instead,
Yeah,
other people are blind because they can't see their perfection, or
yeah.
stupid because they didn't give them what they wanted, or whatever it is.
Mhm.
And so there's a phrase I like, which is, the great tragedy of the world is that the way the phrase goes, the great tragedy of the world is that brilliant people are so insecure, whereas stupid people are full of doubt. I mean, sorry, full of confidence. Brilliant people are insecure, while stupid people are full of confidence. Let's change that from brilliant and stupid to, like, the kinds of people that need to stand up for themselves are wondering, am I being too aggressive? And the
I know.
kinds of people that need to
Tone it
lay
down.
off on others are thinking, other people aren't giving me enough.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah. Yeah, I love the way you just broke that down, and it's so, I think, that's why I talk a lot about empowerment, because there's just so much thing relationship, not just intimate relationships, work, friends, family. I was just talking to my friend Carla, actually, about how I've accepted, some family dynamics over the years, where I'm not finding myself feeling so struggling with the relationship. When you don't accept what is, and you keep hitting the wall trying to figure out, like, why is this happening, instead of like, oh, you know what, this is what it is. What do I want to do about it? Do I want to still be in community with these people, or do I want to take a step back? And I think that's where people get stuck, is that I wouldn't do it. That's not how but they're not you. And so it's really important to really think about, um how can I continue to keep myself empowered, So, I keep this person 7 years is a long time. And so like, I just don't want you to keep going through month after month, year after year, whether it's friends, family, work, your partner, being in a situation, because it just becomes familiar and you just accept it for what it is. So
Years ago, many years ago, I was leaving out of a family function, and a relative said to me, "Hey, Jeff." And the relative doesn't drive, and it's kind of, there's a relative that's kind of known. Someone is probably going to give them a ride because they don't drive. You know what I mean? There's no Uber yet.
yeah, yeah.
And so we come out, and they say like, "Hey, Jeff," and I had already said, "Hey, I'm going here, and I'm going north." They said, "Hey, Jeff, could you give me a ride? 20 miles south?" And I said, I would give you a ride, but you understand, you're going the exact opposite way I'm going, the true exact opposite way. And she said, "Oh, I know, but if you were dumb enough to do it, I'm smart enough to take it."
She said that.
She said that. And I realized something in that moment, that some people roll like that. I don't hate her.
No,
She
yeah.
really said that. And I came away and said, so the idea that like some people have that strategy in life, they'll ask,
Yes.
and you have to, in the end, know your boundaries. Again, to make a win-win. I'm happy to go a little out of my way to give somebody a ride because I feel good knowing that they
Yeah.
got there safely and I was able to make it
Yeah.
convenient. I'm blessed to be able to drive instead of being on the bus. All true.
Yeah.
But you want me to drive an hour out of my way? You want me to drive, if it's 20 miles and then I got to go 10 miles in the other direction, you want me to drive 50 miles, right? Right now, you'll be there.
Yeah.
I'll still be on the road for a half an hour. But if I was dumb enough to do it, they were smart enough to take it. And so in the
Yeah.
end, you're responsible for your boundaries. If you let your boyfriend talk to you any old way, I guess he's going to talk to you any old way. If you let your job pile you up with a bunch of work, then guess what? You're going to be piled up with a bunch of work. If you let whatever toxic behaviors your mate has, because they won't get help, if they won't make any moves and you just stay with them forever trying to convince them for 17 years, then that's on you. In the end, you're the conductor of your own train, baby.
Yeah, I'll end it with Liz. Liz, hi Liz. I never catch you live. I got to keep that in mind for learning to create boundaries and for understanding all that. Yes. Jeff, thank you so much. We're actually going to be doing a live podcast September 30th. So I'll definitely talk about that more next month, but just for people listening, Jeff, let people know how they can reach you if they want to work with you or just look you up.
Yeah. RogersLeads.com, right? You could go to RogersLeads.com. You can email me at jeff@RogersLeads. Whatever you need, I'll see y'all.